once it's not voluntary, now we're talking about assault. Assault is, by definition, an unwanted touching. And Donald Trump said they let you grab them by the pussy, and even he didn't bother to respond to that. He's like, well, of course it's sexual assault, but I didn't really mean it. I just block everyone talk. Nobody bothers to say, no, psychopath, you're redefining consent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, redefining consent. That's the exact problem right there. I mean, that's what they do constantly. It's an argument from convenience. It's entirely like an Alinskyist tactic. I mean, that's where it comes from, is the idea that you push the idea that consent is the most important thing in the world, but when it comes to a situation like that, in which the context gives note to the fact that they let you do it, as in giving consent to it, they then decide that women have no agency whatsoever and are not allowed to consent because of the quote power dynamic.
Exactly. And this is what drives me crazy about so much of our discourse. And, Donald Trump has certainly been better about it than probably anybody else I've seen on the world stage before him. But this is what they do and everything. Like, people don't understand that the left is not, the left wants to control the government. They want to win elections and stuff like that. But they always have this multifaceted approach that they're redefining language and debauching the culture at every step along the way. And it's like, people on the right, they don't understand that they're dealing with Jewish subversion, and so they address the issue in as narrow a manner possible, not realizing the broadness of the assault, And so while they're trying to get Donald Trump not to be president anymore, but what they did was they simultaneously got Donald Trump to agree to a completely nonsense definition of sexual assault in the process, and that just went over without a hitch during the course of the most watched presidential debates probably in the history of the country, and that in and of itself was a huge victory for them,
Yeah, and speaking, somewhat tangentially related, it looks like somebody's been let out of the closet. We have Dr. Air Jordan Peterson with us here. Dr. Peterson, how's it going this evening?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. I've had my Purina. Yes?
Jordan Peterson's on the stream. I got to say, I appreciate a lot of the stuff you do. I understand why you couldn't answer the JQ on a stage up there or whatever. Some people make fun of you for that, but I think you're doing fantastic work. You've been influential on me, and I thank you for everything you're doing, sir.
I appreciate that. And while I was at the time unprepared to answer questions about sort of the JQ, I am currently doing an audiobook version of 200 Years Together.
Oh, that sounds like it's going to be a fantastic listen, man.
It will be. We're going to have the foreword read by Dr. David Duke.
You're working with Dr. David Duke. I think that I've heard that Molyneux is sort of needling you on Twitter. Is that what prompted the change?
I've been, reluctant to read Solzhenitsyn's 200 Years Together because of the things that I've heard about this book in the past, sort of that it's anti-Semitic and things of that nature. Until recently, I've been quite reluctant to look into it. However, an English version came across my desk and I looked into it thanks to Kaiser. He takes very good care of me. He leaves me in his closet with Hannah Hayes and her lizard.
I'm glad he's taking good care of you, man. And also, that English version that came out, if you can figure out the computer, if you could possibly find a way to drop that in chat at some point, or when your master Kaiser happens back on the stream, if you could have him drop the link for that, definitely be nice to follow along or give it a read before you're finished with the audiobook. But that was indeed confirmed. Dr. David Duke announced when he made an appearance on this show that he would be more than happy to read the foreword for that audiobook of 200 Years Together. So I think that'll be a fantastic endeavor.
Yes, I look forward to having it on as many sources as I can get it. YouTube, BitChute, StreamMe, what have you. Any place it can go. I think it's important that the messages of Solzhenitsyn live on.
I could not agree more. Do you by chance have any questions for Mr. Cantwell here? Anything you would like to discuss?
Absolutely. Mr. Cantwell, when you were locked up, what author did you find most influential on your time spent there?
Well, I'd have to say probably the most influential one was Richard Teeter, a book titled Hitler's Revolution. I thought was really insightful. I did read Mein Kampf while I was in there. I thought that was a fantastic read, but I would say probably Richard Teeter's Hitler's Revolution, and then probably right behind that would be Kevin MacDonald. I'd read the entire 3-book series on the Jewish question that he had put together. I also read your book, Mr. Peterson. I read Maps of Meaning, which I thought was a really interesting read. And combining that with sort of the other materials gave me a very unique insight into the human psyche, and I really appreciated it.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you have read my work. Did you, by any chance, read Gulag Archipelago?
Did not get that one. As a matter of fact, I've seen if I could get. I think I was trying to get that in there, but I don't think that we were able to find a paperback version to get into the jail. Sadly,
that's unfortunate. I will send you a copy of that, signed, of course, by me, Dr. Air Jordan Peterson. It is a very, very interesting read, especially for members of the so-called dissident right.
I think it probably is. I know. I've heard you speak about it at some length, and I've actually played some clips of you discussing it. Particularly insightful, I thought the idea that what made the Soviet Union such the hellhole that it was, and it was like it was everybody lied was sort of the conclusion that you came to, and I was like, well, that certainly seems to be exactly where we're going in the United States. Sometimes as I interact with people. Trying to discuss these dissident views of ours, specifically as it pertains to human biodiversity and whatnot, I'm starting to become convinced that everybody knows that they're lying, and they're just for either for fear of punishment or want of reward, they're repeating the lie, knowing that the consequences of telling the truth are so high. And I think that that's exactly where we're heading.
Because one of the things they did, one of the worst things that the Soviet Union did was turn regular people against one another, and they made the reward for doing so just being able to live to the next day. That's how awful it was. I challenge anybody who goes out there and hasn't read the book to the Gulag Archipelago yet. I challenge you to get through it without crying.
That's how it is nowadays, right? People are betraying each other, left, right, and center.
Well, it's also sort of important to note that yes, this current culture that we see ourselves in is one founded upon untruths and flat out lies. Biological facts such as sex are being considered lies. You're no longer a boy at birth or a girl at birth. You choose your sort of biologically determined sex later on in life. And this is so asinine. If you were to tell any biology professor that this is a sort of thing that would be going on in 20 years, they would have laughed in your face. But no, this is the fact of today. We have boys that are prepubescent being given hormone blockers to make them females later on. And the unfortunate part is they will never quite be females because they lack the ability to reproduce.
Indeed. The only thing that they'll ever be capable of doing is interrupting people on Twitch and behaving like fucking assholes and suicide.
But I suppose, though, that is the ultimate goal. When you can make something as easily determined as biological sex a lie, then what else can you get away with is the pertinent question.
I would go so far as to say that, like, my mind initially says that's got to be the limit, but I'm certain that if this continues, I will be proven wrong, right?
You would think.
Yeah.
You'd probably get away with the genocide of an entire race of European people.
Yeah, I think that's probably a pretty apt way to put it. Did you have anything else for Mr. Cantwell here, Dr. Peterson?
You know that's not my name, and you know I don't appreciate being called that.
You fucking call me Pinocchio's balls all the time, asshole.
Yes, that's when you're on my show, isn't it, bucko? At any rate, I have for Mr. Cantwell, I have this to say. Clean your room, wash your genitalia, and love your family.
Well, that sounds like fantastic advice. I've seen people in the chat telling me, clean your fucking apartment. And I'll tell you, I actually I tried to hire a gal to deal with this, and it was a disaster. I brought this gal in here, and she didn't do a good job. And on top of that, as I started talking to her, it turned out that she was a full blown fucking schizophrenic who had been off her fucking meds for 2 years. She could barely hold a conversation. I was like, I thought online dating was bad.
Oh man. Well, again, Dr. Peterson, since that's what you prefer to be called. I would just like to say thank you for coming on the show. I have one last question for you. I think chat would appreciate it as well. Would you mind saying the 14 words for us before you take off, just to know that you have our intentions at heart? Best intentions.
I can't do it.
Well, I tried. I tried, everybody. Well, thanks again for coming on, Dr. Peterson.
Thanks, Doc. Right. It was a real pleasure speaking with you. I got to step away from the computer for like 2 seconds, guys. I'll be right back, okay?
No problem at all.
All right, fantastic.
And while Chris is away from the mic here for just a moment, I just wanted to point out we have another special guest joining us. It looks like we have the big-brained Nibba himself. How's it going, Arnell?
Hey. Good morning. Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning, man. Glad to have you.
Yeah. So, I come on and Chris leaves. I see how it is.
He's racist, man.
Yeah.